achieved.
So in the last few hours, the news has come down that the California State Athletic Commission has handed down a sizable $205,000 fine to Jon Jones and has also revoked his license for a year. But that's not the big daddy that we're waiting on. We are still waiting on the USADA, the United States Anti-Doping Agency's suspension, which I've heard it could be a year. I've heard it could be 4 years. Obviously, if it's, even if it's a year, that's a significant amount of time for a fighter in his prime. And with Jon Jones' lack of activity, that puts him out of action for a long time. But for a lot of people, do they want Jon Jones back in the sport? They feel this is the time you slam the door and you use him to send a message to everybody else. Stay clean. This is a high-profile fighter, arguably the greatest of all time if he'd stayed clean. Still could be if he comes back and proves himself. But the fact of the matter is, do you use him to show the rest of the MMA world if you're not clean, you're going to be punished, and it's your career that's going to be put on the line? Because if it can happen to this guy, it can happen to anybody. I don't know. I want to see... he'll have to suffer some kind of I want to see Jon Jones back in the cage at some point in time. But obviously, I'm of the opinion, how many strikes do you give him? I'd say give him one more, and that's it. And, I'm one of these guys who wants to see fighters fight. I don't want to be sitting here 10 years from now saying I wonder what would have happened had he been back in there and done what he could have done in his prime. I want to see fighters fight. If he fucks it up, it's time to go again. Other people are probably past that point, and I would be surprised if most of you are past that point saying, hey, look, he's had his opportunities, whatever it is, 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out. That's perfectly logical, and I completely understand and agree with you in that sense. But I just have the opinion, give the guy one more chance. If he fucks it up, bye-bye. On that note, let's get to the fighters who actually are fighting as we... welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. I am your host, as always, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we are breaking down the upcoming UFC 222 pay-per-view, which will take place on March 3rd. It's been recently revamped. But we are featuring a women's featherweight championship bout as Cyborg returns to defend her title. Also on the card, Frankie, Edgar taking on Brian Ortega in a massive featherweight showdown. I'll be breaking down those 5 main card predictions for you on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Now, I'm coming off my poorest overall performance of 2018. I went 6-6 at the last event. There were 6 upsets out of 12 fights. So that's going to definitely derail the train a little bit. But still, for the year so far, I am 57-24, which is a 70% prediction rate. That's damn good. My bet packs still had, they basically broke even. The big bankroll returned 37 units. The big reward returned 33, so that's definitely my poorest returns of the year. But I had several parlays and bets that were just one leg off, and had one of those cash, we're making profit again. We're very close. For example, if Mike Perry by knockout didn't come through in a surprising upset win for Max Payne, it didn't produce. That would have been a massive winner. Hey, we're not going to win every night. We got to turn around and get things going for this card, and we'll see how things go. On that note, and you can always buy my prediction pack or my bet packs for $15. That's what they're worth. Or you can subscribe and save yourself some cash, certainly a possibility. And, of course, a lot of people don't like going to these other websites and spending $50, $60 for 2 or 3 bets. What I do is I give you $15. I break down the entire card top to bottom. I give you as much information as I can come up with and as many thoughts as I have. Again, I'm just somebody who's done it for a long time, have a lot of information, ideas. Sometimes I'm fucking completely off base, and that happens. I never make any guarantees. I'm going to guarantee win you money, but I'm going to do my best to put cash in your pocket. That's all I can promise. But I will talk about cards top to bottom and see what we can come up with. On that note, let's get to that first main card prediction. So right before we get into the first prediction, this is actually the second of 3 big women's fights on the card. We also have Mackenzie Dern debuting in the prelim, quote-unquote prelim main event. It's her first UFC fight taking Ashley Yoder, so I'm looking forward to that. I know a lot of people are. Pretty excited about her debuting. Obviously, Kat Zingano back in action, taking on Ketlen Vieira, kind of old guard versus new in the division. Ketlen Vieira, of course, trying to work herself up to an opportunity to fight for the title. Kat Zingano trying to get herself back in there. She currently holds a win over the current champion. And, of course, Cyborg in the main event. So I'm very much looking forward to these women fights. I'm looking forward to having a great time on Saturday night watching all the action go down. Now let's get to that first main card prediction right here. As Kat Zingano, 6th ranked in the division, Alpha Kat Zingano, comes with a record of 9 wins and 2 losses, taking on the 5th ranked Ketlen Vieira of Brazil, undefeated at 9-0. Now, Zingano's returning to action for the first time since fighting at UFC 200. It's been a 19-month layoff, and she's coming in on back-to-back losses. First to Ronda Rousey, the new WWE superstar, don't get me started there, and then to Juliana Pena in a pretty entertaining scrap. Vieira, so far, 3-0 in the UFC. She's progressively faced better competition, and she's had better results each time. Split decision in her debut, defeating Ashley Evans-Smith by decision in her second fight, and submitting Sarah McMahon in her most recent appearance. Physically, Vieira 2 inches taller, so a 2-inch reach advantage, and she is 9 years younger than Kat. The girls have similar total experience as far as quantity is. Obviously, the better quality of experience goes to Kat Zingano, but Ketlen Vieira certainly picked things up with her recent performances. Now, Vieira has put together some vastly different performances in her recent fights. In her debut, she landed 4 takedowns or she gave up 4 takedowns, but outstruck her opponent, and that's how she got the nod in a very close fight. In her second fight, she showcased improved striking. She was taken down a couple of times, but she showed her improved striking to win that matchup. And then against Sarah McMahon, she was absolutely dominated on the mat in the first round. Again, back to the trouble with the takedown, but then turned the fight around and eventually submitted Sarah in the second round, which is very impressive. We're finding out it's maybe not that difficult to do based on last weekend's fight. Now, Zingano, she's had a history of struggling with takedowns of her opponent. Miesha Tate took her down multiple times, but Kat rallied and stopped her. Amanda Nunes dominated Kat early in that fight, but Kat rallied and stopped her. Ronda Rousey very quickly scored that first round submission victory, and then Kat completely flipped the script against Juliana Pena, taking it to her early on, winning that opening round pretty much, and then fading and losing a decision. And Kat traditionally, other than that last fight, is traditionally a very slow starter. She tends to get behind, but she loves those dirty, dragged-out battles of attrition. She'll take damage, survive, and eventually rally and look to put her opponent away. When striking, she'll throw some kicks at range, but traditionally she likes to run forward behind her punches and tie up, enter that clinch position, and go to work on the inside. She does a good job of landing knees and elbows from the clinch. She hurt Tate with knees and elbows on the inside and eventually finished her. She does a nice job, and I like the way when the clinch breaks or on a failed takedown attempt, or anytime you're in close quarters and you're about to separate, she'll try and throw a knee up. Sometimes it's borderline illegal, but the fact of the matter is it's always threatening, and it can do damage. At least it forces her opponent to become defensive on the break and not look for their own offense. As far as her takedowns are concerned, of course, she's a BJJ black belt. She's very talented on the mat. She'll score takedowns with a body lock or trip combination. We've seen her use belly-to-belly takedowns, just judo-type throws. She can do various takedowns to put her opponent on the mat. The question is, how does she fare if she can't put her opponent on the mat? That's a big factor. When she fought Juliana Pena, she was able to take her down, but she couldn't keep her down when she got on top. She was getting a little bit too wild, looking to open up with big shots. She does have some good ground and pound if she can control the position, but at the same time, we saw Pena get back up and eventually capitalize and get the dominant position there on the floor. Now, for Vieira, she is young and she is improving. She's adding to and rounding out her offensive game. And, all 3 of her UFC fights have come since Kat last fought in the UFC. So she is a fighter that's young. It's young and developing and on the rise and really racking up the best fights of her career while Kat's been sitting idle. It certainly was concerning to see her get dominated. She got mounted and almost pounded out by McMahon in the first round. And again, she rallied. She had some issues against Kelly Fasshole in her debut. And that's something Kat's going to look at to capitalize on here, is try and get takedowns and put her on her back and take her out of the fight early. On the feet, Vieira throws some nice combinations. When she was fighting Ashley Evans-Smith, every time Ashley Evans-Smith threw a combo, Vieira was waiting, and boom, would fire back a much more impactful and, more busy, more strikes. She's landing more strikes, a greater volume. Let's go with that. She pauses her left hand. She'll throw a nice left jab. She's got a right hook behind it. She'll lead with the left and follow the big right hook. She'll mix in a body kick. Well, she's a big, strong girl. She has good hand position, decent pop in her hands, and doesn't throw heavy all the time, so she's not always committing to those big strikes. Throwing some half power time, and I like that. When she has success against Ashley Evans-Smith is when she was backing her up to the cage and landing hard shots and forcing her opponent to really cover up, and that was I like that. She will swing a little bit wild at times, and but that's the thing. If she connects and she's on the inside and has greater impact than her opponents, that's going to add up over the duration of a fight. We did see her get some takedowns against Ashley Evans-Smith, a body lock takedown. She dragged her down. She held her down, did some damage control to the position. That's nice to see here. Ultimately, it's hard to back Kat Zingano. She turns 36 in a couple of months. She's been out for almost 2 years. Usually a slow starter, and she faded in her last fight, fighting a big physical fighter like Pena, and that's what Ketlen Vieira offers as well. Vieira is much more active as far as the striking is concerned. She's improving. I expect to see her take more, a continued improvement, continued strides coming into this fight. She needs to stay off her back, especially early. Can't let Kat get on top of her. Let her hands go, and my prediction is Ketlen Vieira to defeat Kat Zingano by decision. Fight number 2 in the main card heads up to the UFC's heavyweight divisions. The 10th-ranked Stefan Skyscraper Struve, 32 wins and 9 losses, takes on the 12th-ranked former UFC heavyweight champion Andrei the Pitbull Arlovski, 26 wins, 15 defeats, and 1 no contest. Now, Struve is coming off a TKO loss to Alexander Volkov. It snapped his 2-fight winning streak, and he had won 3 of 4 prior to that defeat, so a little bit of a setback for him. Arlovski actually ended a sizable losing streak, defeating Junior Albini in an upset. He had lost 5 consecutive bouts. But it's worth noting he lost 4 in a row earlier in his career in devastating fashion that had everybody writing him off. And then after that slump, he went on an impressive 10 wins, 1 loss, and 1 no contest run that got him back into the to relevance. Can he do something similar here? We'll have to wait and see. Now, you're looking at Struve. He is 8 inches taller than Arlovski. He will have a 7-inch reach advantage, and he is 9 years younger. Those are all big numbers. The other big numbers we're going to talk about, they have a combined 17 losses by knockout. 10 for Arlovski, 7 for Struve. These guys have been finished a lot. But again, you're fighting at heavyweight. And if you're predominantly striking and standing on the feet trading, that's going to happen, especially as you get on in your career. Struve's still not that old. He's fairly young. But yeah, he's been through a lot of wars. For Arlovski, it's worth noting he's moved from Jackson Winklejohn recently. He seems to have reinvented himself. He looked very good in his last fight against Albini, who was a dangerous fighter coming in, maybe a little overblown after a successful debut. But either way, he looked better. Now, it's certainly worth noting that Arlovski, during his slump, has fought good competition. He fought the champ, he fought 2 title challengers, he fought a former champion, and arguably he was 1 round away from beating Marcin Tybura, going into the 3rd round tied at 1, having won the 2nd round. In his last fight where he looked different, he was remaining active, and that was the key to his success. And we saw that maybe in some of his struggles where he just wasn't as active as he needed to be. He was throwing combinations, he was changing levels, he was doing a lot of things we haven't seen out of Andrei Arlovski in more recent performances. He throws that big overhand right to throw a nice counter left hook as well. He throws quick left, a big overhand right combination. And I really liked that he was going to the body a lot, right hook to the body, and he was mixing in an uppercut. And again, that's if you start working the body and guys start dropping their hands, you're going to open up opportunities to strike elsewhere. If you can land that uppercut at heavyweight, you can put a lot of guys down. His kicks were good. Throws the leg kick, push kick to the body. He'll just throw heavy kicking in, which can help maintain distance and do damage. We saw at times, again, the calf kick as well worked in there. We saw at times him throwing multiple kicks in succession, and I like that. It's just a nice technique that throws guys off and makes them think about a different element. Arlovski, for the most part, was moving fairly well in that fight, looked light on his feet, dipping from different angles, throwing around the guard of his opponent, which, again, if you can get them covering up, that's a big advantage if you can get your hands going and land some big shots. On top of all things defensively, when his opponent would push forward and try, he would immediately tie up and clinch and shut down their offensive flow and make it dirty and ugly. I like that. Fight on his terms. Now, he has had issues in the past with his chin. Obviously, we know that. He's had tendencies to freeze up under fire. That's something you'll have to avoid because, again, as many changes as you undergo, if you get hurt or touched in a manner that really throws you off your game, it's very easy to revert back to some of your previous issues. Now, look at Stefan Struve. He has filled out physically. The man's a monster, cutting now 15, 20 pounds to make the limit, and at 6'11.5", almost 7 feet tall, he is a physical giant, an anomaly in the UFC, and he moves so well for a big man. He appears to have put his health issues behind him. It looked like they were going to derail his UFC career. And again, it could pop up at any time, but we're going to go with that assumption. He's talked about changing his style. He's added more Thai boxing into his attack, certainly changed his stance a little bit. He actually was lowering himself a little bit in his last fight. And again, he was taking on a 6'7" guy, but he didn't look nearly as tall. And again, that could take away some of those advantages of the reach. He's never been exceptional at using that reach, using his jab. He was getting better, and I wonder if that's something we're going to see a change out of him that takes away from that element, that advantage he has. He throws a big overhand right. He paws the left constantly. Again, that left jab. He'll throw a front kick to the body. He was trading with Volkov and getting tagged at times, and that was certainly concerning. He was getting backed up and hurt with some big shots. Every time he covered up, Volkov was just using volume and putting damage on him, and eventually added up to a finish. Now, Struve has had success on the mat if he opts to get there. He's not a big takedown guy. He often will rely on his opponents to put the fight on the mat. He will work off his back. Once the fight does go there, he's pretty aggressive. And he's got some pretty good takedown. His takedowns, I guess his best takedowns would come from the clinch position. Arguably, Arlovski, it's pretty simple. He has to avoid getting cracked here when he moves in and looks to get in range. But I think he's going to outwork Stefan Struve. Struve could knock him out, countering him, sticking a jab out there and clocking him with something as Arlovski moves forward. But I like Arlovski's hand speed on the inside to negate that reach of Stefan Struve and put it on him and put some volume on him like Volkov did. I really like what Andrei showed with those multi-punch combinations, working the body over, changing levels, changing angles. That was very effective, and I'm hoping to see a little bit more out of that, with the camp change. Struve really hasn't faced a capable boxer prior to Volkov, and you go back to the Nogueira fight, and Nogueira, was a shell of himself. He retired after that matchup, and Struve did not look that good against him. So it's worth noting that he's just struggled at times with guys that can put their hands together. I think Arlovski can, short of getting clipped with a knockout. I think he wins this matchup, and my prediction is Andrei Arlovski to defeat Stefan Struve. I'll take Arlovski by decision. Fight number 3 in the main card heads right back down to the UFC's bantamweight division as Sugar Sean O'Malley, undefeated at 9-0, takes on the Asian sensation Andrei Soukhamthath with a current record of 12 wins and 5 losses. Now, the UFC's really pushing O'Malley. He's kind of got a bit of a following. He seems like a likable and entertaining, enjoyable fighter, fan-friendly style. He's coming off a decision victory over Terry, where I picked Ware. I thought Ware held his own and had a chance to win that fight, simply just didn't do enough late. For Soukhamthath, he had lost back-to-back split decisions to start his UFC career, and that's not a great start. It's a tough one to swallow. Albert Morales and Alejandro Perez getting the nods in those 2 matchups, but he picked up a very impressive TKO victory over Cool Hand Luke Sanders, and damn impressive victory over a pretty good prospect in Sanders. I was, it wasn't a huge performance of Soukhamthath, but ultimately he got his hand raised. We'll talk about that in a bit. Physically, O'Malley 2 inches taller, with a 2-inch reach advantage, and he is 6 years younger than Andrei. Now, Soukhamthath has had issues with urgency in close fights, and they have cost him. He tends to let his opponents attack first. He's looking to sit back and counter. You look at his numbers. He lost his debut in the striking total by 10 strikes. The second fight was by 1. 2 fights he lost. Had he picked up the pace, he might have been able to pick up a victory. In his last matchup against Sanders, even though he got the victory, he was -3 in the striking exchange rate when it was all said and done. So he's not a guy who's going to blow away his opposition with his volume. He does have pop in his hands. He'll work behind a jab. He likes to sit in the pocket at times and slip and rip. His defense is a little bit lax because he's willing to take a shot to land a shot. He's got a pretty good counter left. He dropped Perez I think 3 times actually, if I remember correctly, using that jab and popping it out and putting him on his butt. So he's got that pop. When he took out Sanders, he landed a massive counter right hand, and then of course the ground and pound to finish it. Sanders was beating him up though, and that was, Sanders was backing him up in that matchup. Soukhamthath looked very tentative early on. He was fighting off the cage, too willing to sit back and counter, and he was getting outworked for the duration. So even with that follow-up undefended ground and pound that really racks up the striking numbers, it was not a good performance by Soukhamthath as far for a complete performance, other than that moment that got him the victory. When you look at that matchup, he tends to be a little bit busier in round 2. He lets round 1 get away from him at times, and he tends to come on a little bit stronger in round 2. He did it against Morales. He obviously did it against Sanders. He tried it against Alejandro Perez a little bit. And ultimately he got the finish against Sanders, didn't get it against Morales, lost the fight. And overall, he's 1-5 in decisions, which is not shocking considering his style. Now, for O'Malley, he fights like a young man that just wants to scrap. He tends to be a little bit reckless. But he can carry an impressive and overwhelming pace that gets him the victory. He's not perfect, and his gas tank is not amazing. It's not all otherworldly, but it's enough to get the job done. He throws lots of kicks, especially early in the fight, turning side kick, high kick, body kicks. He works a lot of kicks, and he gets some good length behind it. He'll throw a solid left jab. He'll throw a right hook while sliding off to the side. He'll use a lot of fakes and feints to draw out his opponent, lots of movement. He's got head movement while moving back and forth. Now, he was getting tagged at times by Ware, especially as the fight progressed. And Ware had some success pinning him along the cage. But I would say the grappling advantage in this fight should rest with O'Malley, so I don't expect to see Soukhamthath having too much success there, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about it. Now, O'Malley slowed down a bit as the fight progressed, and Ware was pushing forward, having some success, but O'Malley rallied back in the 3rd round, took control, used that jab very effectively. Ware slowed down as well. That could have been octagon nerves for 2 guys for O'Malley, who was making his debut. I think Ware was as well. Maybe? I'm not 100% sure. In this fight, my biggest concern is Soukhamthath's power, and it's going to create a lot of issues if O'Malley lets him hit him too often. He might not be able to put him down with 1 shot, maybe he can, but if he hits 3 or 4 and O'Malley starts to take a back step, we could see this fight turn in a hurry. But Soukhamthath's ultimate willingness to counter is going to be tough against the length and the kicks and the movement of O'Malley and just his overall style of striking. O'Malley, he's going to get up early in this fight. He's going to start to put, with his aggressive early start and with the fact that Soukhamthath tends to be a bit of a slow starter. And the thing is that Soukhamthath is going to slow down a little bit in this matchup, trying to chase the longer, more active fighter. I think it'll allow O'Malley to pull away in the later part of the fight after getting ahead early on. O'Malley's simply going to do more in this matchup. He needs to avoid the fight-changing strike, but my prediction is Sugar Sean O'Malley to defeat Andrei Soukhamthath. I'll take O'Malley by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's featherweight division as the number 2 ranked Frankie the Answer Edgar, former lightweight champion, 21 wins, 5 losses, and 1 draw, takes on the 3rd ranked Brian T. City Ortega, undefeated at 13-0 with a single no contest on his record. Now, this fight was originally scheduled to be for the title, with Holloway taking on Edgar. Max out. Edgar puts his title shot on the line here against an incredibly dangerous opponent in Brian Ortega. He could have easily said, no, I'm not fighting until Max is ready, but instead he's back in action. Edgar, he is 7-1 over his last 8 appearances, only 2 defeats at featherweight, coming against Jose Aldo. You know, can he get a shot against Max Holloway, or is he going to completely blow up by losing this fight? Big question, big risk. We'll see. That's why you gotta love Frankie Edgar. Now, Ortega, he's undefeated. He has, 5 wins in a row after his no contest in his debut. He's had solid escalation of competition. He's finished all 5, 4 of which coming in the 3rd round, which is crazy. Is Frankie Edgar, the first thing I want to look at, is Frankie Edgar the last of the old guard? You know, he beat back Vieira Rodriguez. You know, Cub Swanson was able to beat back Du Ho Choi, but then turned around and lost to Brian Ortega. Jose Aldo, of course, losing to Max Holloway twice. Ricardo Lamas just getting knocked out. Lamas getting finished. You have to start to wonder, are these guys that have dominated the top half of the division, the Aldos, the Edgars, the Lamases, the Cub Swansons, the Chad Mendezes, who's kind of drifted away with the suspension but could be back soon, is their time done? Are we seeing a new breed of fighter step up? Is Ortega going to put the last guy out of commission and set up a possible huge fight between Ortega and Max Holloway? Not that I kind of want to see Edgar versus Holloway first. But either way, Ortega, he's an impressive and thrilling fighter, and he has this knack for snatching victory from defeat in some of his in fights where he's en route to a defeat, or at least it's very close, and then boom, definitive finish, it's over, his hand is raised. Physically, Ortega 2 inches taller, with a 1-inch reach advantage, and he is 10 years younger than Frankie Edgar, and he's just over 2 months removed from his victory over Cub Swanson, so he's back in action in a hurry. Now, as I said, Ortega's style is both exciting and dangerous, but ultimately he relies on that fight-changing or fight-finishing moment that you have to wonder at some point, is that going to catch up to him? It very well could. You know, I thought Cub Swanson, honestly, I picked Swanson in that fight. Swanson was holding his own early. I thought that was the ceiling for Ortega, where you can fall behind a fighter and eventually get back into it. Is that going to cost him against Frankie Edgar over 3 rounds? Will he fall behind too early and not be able to catch up, and eventually Frankie just grinds out a fight? Is that what's going to happen here? When you look at what's happening, I thought Ortega was losing to Clay Guida. The strikes were 62 apiece until Guida got finished. You know, Thiago Tavares landed 6 takedowns. I don't know if he was ahead or not, because there was a lot of damage going his way, but either way, finished there to definitively win that matchup. Diego Brandao, 56-29 in strikes against Ortega before Ortega finished him. Renato Moicano, 109 significant strikes to 65. Cub Swanson, 60-24. You see the point I'm driving at here is that Ortega falls behind and then rallies late to pick up the victory. When will that cost him? Is it this fight? He has that unreal submission game. 7 wins by submission, mostly types of chokes. He can do it standing. He can do it from, from top position, from bottom position, jumping on a guy's back. It's very impressive. And he doesn't need takedowns to win this matchup. He can grab a sub, as we saw against Cub, from the clinch, or he's very good at rotating to his opponent's back and getting up there. He did that in his debut that was turned over due to a no contest. He is very dangerous. As long as he can reach you, you are in submission danger. As far as the striking is concerned, we saw it improve. He upped his tempo against Renato Moicano. He stepped into the pocket and threw. He had some good pop on his hands. He was a little bit reckless at times. He was getting hit more than he was hitting, but it was doing the damage and ultimately slowed him down enough to get the victory. He has a pretty big right hand. He'll use the left jab to both attack and disrupt, sticks it in there to disrupt his opponent's rhythm. And Ortega does a good job of keeping pressure on. That's important. But it's also, as I said, worth noting, he's tagged with some big shots in recent fights. To Cub, Moicano, these guys were hitting him hard. And until he turned the fight in his favor, again, he was in trouble, I felt. Now, Frankie Edgar, the keys to his success and his longevity in the sport have been his pace, his volume, and his cardio, and the latter making the first 2 possible. Edgar has shown more killer instinct of late. The TKO of Victor Rodriguez, the knockout of Mendez, the submission of Cub Swanson. The guy's damn impressive. But is he one of the best fighters not to hold a UFC title currently? Quite possibly he is. Is he going to be unable to get there? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. He has relied on his wrestling in a number of fights, but that puts him in the danger zone again, working in the guard of Ortega. That puts Brian Ortega right in his wheelhouse. I would expect Frankie Edgar to use that wrestling in reverse to keep this fight standing, keep Ortega off the mat. I think Frankie needs to keep vertical, work from the outside, pile up the damage. Ortega wants to get in close and use his wrestling to mix it up. I think Edgar has been taken, he hasn't been taken down since 2012 in the first Benson-Henderson fight. But he has been hurt, and that's worth noting. And Ortega, if Ortega can stun him, he certainly will have an opportunity to lock up a submission and try and get something to put this fight away. And that would be his fight-changing moment. With this a 3-round fight, could Ortega let it get away from him too early? Frankie tends to be a bit of a slow starter as well, but I think he avoids that here. I think Edgar's going to keep Ortega from getting the fight-changing moment. He's going to push him. He's going to pile up the damage. And my prediction is Frankie Edgar to defeat Brian Ortega by decision. And finally, we move to the main event of the evening in the women's featherweight division as the champion, Cris Cyborg, 19-1-0 with 1 no contest, takes on challenger and Invicta bantamweight champion Yana Kunitskaya with a current record of 10 wins, 3 losses, and 1 no contest. Now, Cyborg was tagged to save this card after the original championship bout fell through. They're looking for her to continue to be a destroyer and show how dominant she can be and build her up as a draw. Certainly possible. We are pretty much still waiting for a legitimate 145-pounder to step up and take on Cyborg. And that's not what we're seeing. Megan Anderson appears to be the answer to that question. We'll see if it ever happens in the future. I'm certainly hoping it will. But again, is there no division because Cyborg is so dominant? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. Either way, now for Kunitskaya, she's the Invicta champion. She won the title from Tanya Evinger via armbar. It was an outcome that was overturned because of a poor reffing, a mistake by the referee. Then she turned around and fought Evinger again, lost by rear naked choke. And then she won the title that was vacated when Evinger stepped up to go to the UFC. So it's interesting, worth noting that we have a fighter challenging the title against a champion who just beat the ever-loving hell out of the girl that recently beat the challenger. Yeah, that shows what kind of state we're in with this division. Kunitskaya, she's coming off a win. She's one win, 1 loss, and 1 no contest over her last 3 fights. For her career, she has 7 wins by knockout, never been knocked out, 1 and 2 in fights ended by submission, 2 and 1 on the scorecard. So she's kind of been a knockout or bust type fighter. Now, one thing that's worth noting right away, she is training out of Jackson Wink. And she's training alongside Holly Holm and has access to Holly Holm and Holly Holm's coaches. They're her coaches. They just prepped for a fight with Cyborg. So they are going to have a plethora of information, a wealth of information to pull from to help build a game plan that will allow Kunitskaya to best succeed. Does she have the skills that Holly Holm has to replicate what Holly Holm did to make it a very close fight? It doesn't appear that she does. But still, Jackson Wink are very good at making game plans up to upend dominant champions. We'll see if they can do that here. Now, we know that she had that controversial win, as I mentioned, submission win over Evinger. It was overturned. She lost the rematch. She doesn't have a lot of submission wins on her record, but she attacked off her back, and she looked dangerous in a couple of different fights doing so. And I think the reason, I can't remember, I believe the reason that the fight was overturned was because she was stepping on Evinger's face trying to pull her arm out of the armbar, and the official, that's not illegal. She wasn't kicking her. And the official, I believe he broke that, and then shortly thereafter, Evinger had to tap. And then the official was told, no, you can't do that you should allow that to continue. So either way, very odd. Justice was served ultimately. Good to see there. But she has looked good, decent off her back. So that's one of the things. Could she possibly Fabricio Verdum Cyborg's Fedor by catching her with some kind of slick submission off her back after a knockdown? Cyborg has to be careful. Now, Kunitskaya does have a background in Taekwondo and Muay Thai, so striking-based. She throws an okay left jab. She'll throw some snappy low kicks. She'll throw a push kick to the body. I saw her throw a spinning wheel kick, but it was a little bit slow for my money. It wasn't that impressive. Her movement's not great. She likes to sit in front of her opponent in the pocket, and then from there she'll look to engage and close the gap for the clinch. Push her opponent in the cage, land short strikes, control them for prolonged periods of time. She came out against Evinger trying to throw a little more volume and simply didn't look that comfortable. It's not her normal style, and again, you have to wonder, how is she going to impose a physical-based style against a physical monster like Cyborg? Not very well, as far as I'm concerned. Now, when you look at Cyborg, she showed she can win a 5-round fight against a fighter that isn't going to fold up. And that certainly dashes the hopes of a lot of fighters who felt that they can get through rounds 2 and 3 and get into rounds 4 and 5, Cyborg could fade. She landed 118 strikes against Holly Holm to just 44. That's pretty damn impressive. Cyborg's a monster, there's no denying it. She physically overwhelms her opponents with her power, but she can fight much more measured and do damage over a prolonged period of time, and that's huge. I would think she's going to come out motivated here to try and score a finish after her first decision victory since 2008. Is her dominance leading to a shocking upset, flash knockout or sub like we talked about at the beginning? Maybe. I don't think Kunitskaya is the person to do it. I think some people describe her as a warm body to just get this pay-per-view a title fight and keep it going. I don't think Kunitskaya is physical enough. She lacks a strong wrestling game. She's not as skilled as Holly Holm. She's not as tough as Tanya Evinger. It's not there. Am I going to be the one to take a long shot on a huge underdog and then say I called it? Absolutely not. My prediction is Cris Cyborg to defeat and retain her title to defeat Yana Kunitskaya by TK. KO. So those are my 5 main card predictions for UFC 222. All of my preliminary picks, as per usual, are available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Check them out. The bet packs, which still are kicking ass this year, available just for $15, or subscribe and save yourself some dough. Also in the bet shop on my website. You can follow me on Twitter at KO_predictions. I very much enjoy predicting fights and breaking stuff down, so hopefully you enjoy that. Please feel free to contact me if need be. You can do it through the website, you can do it through Twitter, you can do it through Facebook. If you have any questions, email me as well. If you have any questions about anything I provide or anything I didn't mention in my breakdowns, I usually do my best to return emails as quickly as I possibly can, as many of you know. And as always, thank you very much for tuning in. It's always good to hear from those people, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care, guys. Hi.